Welcome to the Tambellini Group's Women in Technology Spotlight Series. In these interviews, we showcase the career paths, perspectives, and accomplishments of the remarkable women driving technology forward in higher education. And today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Bridget Yuhas, who serves as the Director of Student Affairs, Assessment, and Strategy at Butler University in Indiana. Welcome, Bridget.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you. Let's start at the beginning. So,
Sure.
thinking back to your childhood, was there anything you thought you wanted to be when you grow up, and what was that and why?
Sure. Well, I'm going to date myself here. When I grew up, I was an 80s child,
Me
and
too.
the the best thing about the 80s was the cartoons, I think. And so I was a very big fan of Jem and the Holograms.
Oh, I
And
remember
so
that one. Yeah.
I was very certain that I was going to be a rock and roll drummer when I grew up so that I could play with Jem and the holograms. And that was just going to be my path. And I knew it. And that was it. So a little bit different now than what I had planned to be. But I still have Jem and the holograms in my heart, I think.
And you've got some nice purple, like bright colors too, in
Yeah.
the gem spirit, I would say.
Yes, that's right. A little tip of the hat to Jem.
So fast forwarding to now, what can you tell us a little bit about your educational background and career path? Like what led you to your current role?
Sure. I studied creative writing at DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana, and just had a wonderful time there and really enjoyed being creative. Really enjoyed learning about media and communications and things like that at DePauw. Um, and then I graduated, and this writing degree didn't exactly lead directly to one specific thing. And so I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do. And so um, a great friend of mine was going to work at the Interlochen Arts Academy, which is up in northern Michigan. It's a high school boarding school for students who are really interested in the arts. And she said, they still need somebody else to be a hall counselor in one of the residence halls. Why don't you come and do this? And I was like, great, this sounds perfect. Um, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being a resource for the women in the residence hall. I really loved being able to help them as they were navigating some of the excitement and some of the challenges in their school careers. And so I continued to work in residence life for a couple of years and then realized I really wanted to work in higher education and not high school. Um, and so ended up getting my master's degree in higher education from Indiana University and then started working in campus programs. So all of the late nights, all of the weekends, the concerts, all that good stuff
The free
out at
pizza? There's usually free pizza involved in a lot
oh,
of
so much free pizza, like every t-shirt that you could possibly want. Yes.
okay.
And that was out in Baltimore at Towson University. And I just loved it. It was wonderful. After 4 years, though, of all the nights and weekends, I thought perhaps it was time for a little bit of a change. So I ended up working in alumni programming, which is just a totally different pace of things. And then through some family things that were happening, ended up moving back to Indiana, where I'm from, and started my doc program at IU there for higher education again. And the coolest thing about that experience was getting to work with the National Survey of Student Engagement. And I know that makes me sound terribly nerdy because I thought working at a survey was really cool, but being able to see how um, really helping institutions use their data to make a difference in students' lives was really cool to me. I think data can kind of be dry and intimidating and just not that fun. Um, but using the data can be fun and it can be really engaging. And so being able to help institutions take what was kind of on a like a spreadsheet or something and turn it into something that makes a difference in students' lives was just really great experience. And so that's what brought me to Butler was after working at Nessie for 5 years, I came to this assessment job here at Butler. Um, and it's just been a really cool experience to kind of continue that work of translating what happens in survey land into what happens in the actual student experience. So it's just, I never thought I would be a data person. I started off as a writer, right?
Right.
And it's been cool to be able to kind of marry those two things in terms of, making the data come alive rather than just sit in a binder on a shelf somewhere.
It's interesting to hear about your trajectory there from doing the one-on-one sort of counseling and mentoring of students to people think when they go to the data that well, that's not a very interpersonal thing. They
Right?
also, you probably didn't think you would be in something that's considered a technology role. So can you
Although
tell us a little?
Synergy and Gem, of course, were very cutting edge technology back in the day,
This is true. Holograms, I mean, those
right?
are starting to become something now, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
But let's talk a bit about what does a week in the life look like for you at work? What are you
Sure.
doing? Can you talk a little bit about how technology plays into this role? I mean, obviously the data gathering involves that, but how are you using what you find in those assessments or other tools to, as you said, change the lives of students and help them?
Absolutely. So the really great thing for me about this role at Butler is that no week is ever the same as the one
Mhm.
before. No year is ever the same as the one before. So I'm very fortunate to be able to work with every office in the Division of Student Affairs. So first of all, I'm a nosy human being, and so I get to be in their business and I get to know what's going on with everybody. So that is great for me. And I get to help them decide, like say, take a step back from your day-to-day practice. Like try to put the emails and the calls on hold for just a minute and think. Think about what you want students to ultimately get from an interaction with your office, with your program, with your service, with your facility. Um, and then once we get to those outcomes that we really want students to achieve, we can kind of work backwards and figure out ways to assess them and make sure that they're happening for students. Because, I've never met anyone in student affairs who is like, I'm not really, I'm not really big on whether or not students are actually getting what I want out of this. Like
Right.
everyone really wants their students to be able to thrive and to achieve and to learn from their programs. So being able to kind of start at the end and work backwards and make sure that we are weaving in the learning and the experiences throughout each office has just been really rewarding. So I do work with the learning outcomes and assessing programs and services for student affairs. Um, I also have this strategy part of my title, which means that I get to help with strategic planning for
Okay.
offices and for the division. So being able to kind of think ahead and long term, being able to get all of our staff on the same page in terms of where we're going, so that all boats are sort of rowing in the same direction. I think that's just so helpful because when you don't know where you're going, folks are just kind of all over the place and feeling like maybe they aren't as plugged in to what the overall division is trying to do, and it can feel kind of isolating and just sort of like what am I doing and what is the purpose of what I'm doing. But when we have these overarching goals and plans together, there isn't a question. We all know what's going on. We all know we're all working towards the same things, and it's a really interesting way to build team and camaraderie, and one that I hadn't really thought of before I started this role. So that has been really interesting as well. Um, I also have the good fortune of working with our Institute for Wellbeing here at Butler. So that is
Okay.
a brand new institute that we just launched this past March. So we offer student well-being research, assessment, and consulting. So that has been a really great initiative. I was able to write a survey about student well-being, and that's been used at 20 campuses so far. So we have more than like 16,000 student responses at this point.
Wow.
So being able to get that information out nationally, um, I think is just really important because, again, it helps folks who are on the ground be able to do what they are experts in more efficiently, effectively, and save their time for what they really want to do, um, as opposed to just sort of doing the spaghetti method and trying to figure out what sticks.
Yeah.
We can ask questions and we can understand what students want and what they need, and then we can direct our efforts towards those things.
That's really cool. Well, it's a great segue too into my next question for you. And I'm sure there are a lot of different projects you can choose from, but can you think of a particular initiative, maybe it's this new wellness institute or something else that you're particularly proud of that, or an accomplishment, or even part of your role that you find most gratifying?
Absolutely. I think I would say this new survey and the institute, um, because it's been a really interesting experience to be able, again, to kind of pause and think about what do we need to know from students about their experiences that is going to be able to let us help them in the biggest possible way, efficiently and effectively. So,
Mhm.
the survey that I wrote is called the Student Wellbeing Institutional Support Survey, or SWIS. And the thing that's different about it that I think is helpful is that it doesn't ask individual students, like, how are you doing? How is your mental well being? How is your physical well being? How is your financial literacy? It actually asks students, how well are we as your institution doing in supporting you to be able to have a better sense of physical, mental, spiritual well being? So it gives institutions directly actionable information, because if students are saying, actually, I don't feel supported in seeking out spiritual or religious opportunities, then we as institutions can say, oh, okay, well, I guess that's pretty clear. I guess we know where we need to direct some of our attention right now. Um, so it's just a new way of thinking about how we can help students, and really give that information again to the people who are on the front lines of working with our students, so that they can hear directly what's really going well and celebrate that, and
Right.
then direct their attention to things that students are saying, hey, we could really use some more of this in order to help improve our overall well-being.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned changing the questions,
Yeah.
instead of, we hear so much about these surveys done, whatever percentage of students feel anxious or
Yes.
depressed or overwhelmed or other things. And I love the way you've taken that and changed the survey. How much does the school have to do with this?
um so the institution um really doesn't have to do much work with it, which is wonderful. I take care of almost everything for the institutions. um and then I'm able to give folks access to these really cool data dashboards, bringing in the technology piece. Um, because, as I said before, data and surveys are great, but if they just sit on the shelf, it doesn't do anybody any good, right? Or if the reports are so, at 900,000 feet that no one can understand them, again, you know, we can check the box to say that we've surveyed or assessed, but it's not really helping. So, being able to give folks these data visualization tools through Qualtrics has been wonderful, because anyone can look at these tools and immediately grasp what's going on. And it just helps to translate the results across all kinds of audiences on campus. And everyone is able to quickly be on the same page. And you don't have to be a data nerd like me to parse things out. You don't need to use SPSS. You don't need any of that.
Mhm.
You're able to quickly see what's going on with our students. And then, of course, the more quickly we can understand and come to consensus about what's happening, then we're able to take action more quickly. So, um, really using technology to help sort of democratize the data and give more meaningful access to information, I think is so important, in a role like mine that deals with data and assessments all the time.
Yes. Well, so you've said two things about yourself. You said you are by nature a nosy person, and you've also
I am.
also said that you're a data nerd. So
Yes.
I think with those two things in mind, our next question, you've got this genie that comes down, right? And they can answer any question for you. And you love data, you love to ask questions. You can ask them one thing about the future of higher education in technology. So what do you want to know from that genie? And you can't say, I'd like to have 10 more questions.
Shoot. How did you know? I think this is such a fascinating question. I think if I had to narrow it down to one, which is so hard as a person who asks questions all the time,
I can
narrowing it
give you
down to
two.
one.
I'll give you two.
Ooh, oh, okay. Um, First, I think I would ask, what is going to be the technology that is going to allow us to form the best campus community that we can in the
Mhm,
future? Because, after, well, during the pandemic and after, the college environment and climate just changed. It just did. We weren't doing in-person programming. We weren't doing a lot of campus traditions. We just
mhm.
couldn't do that and keep our students safe. And so their social connection really suffered, as all of ours did, I think.
Yeah,
And so as we work to rebuild that, it would be really wonderful to find a way to use technology to connect students and either in person or online or whatever form it is, but make them feel like they have a community, that they don't have to make such a huge effort or be nervous or anxious about finding those connections. Um, Being able to kind of lower the barriers to connecting to one another, I think, is so important. So that would be my one, like, what's coming next?
right.
um, I think too that it would be great to find out how can we most help students easily and quickly connect with whatever support it is that they need.
Mhm,
So we have a lot of students who do like to interact in person and they love to come to events. They would prefer to go to the counseling center in person. They would love to go to our career services in person. We have a lot of students who don't need that or not interested in that. So being able to use technology to um, serve all students who are on our campus in the way that they would most like to be served and most like to interact with us and our services. Um, I think if we could figure that out, we would have a silver bullet and we would really be able to um, increase our student experience along all kinds of metrics and really engage our students in new ways.
yeah, that would be amazing. There seem to be so many technology apps and platforms
Yeah,
and tools trying to make those claims. So it'd be
exactly.
great to know who is right and who isn't on
It
those
would be.
fronts. So we're going to close with one last question. And
Sure.
you're someone who mentioned this is sort of an accidental career path for you in some ways. You've had a very interesting, long and winding journey to where you are now. Um, when you think about, I'm sure you've been given a lot of advice from many different people. Is there one piece of advice that stood out to you as particularly useful that you apply in your work, in managing others and working with data, or just working in higher ed?
Yes, definitely. I think I'm going to cheat and give two here
That's
again.
fine. That's fine.
Okay. Um, the first is, and I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but not so overtly, but it's don't let the tyranny of the urgent distract you from what's really important. Because I feel like we all have a million things coming at us all day. The calls, the emails, the meetings, um, deadlines, all of that. But those things, they need to be attended to, of course. But if you don't pause and kind of take a step back to see where they fit in to your overall career goals, your drive and meaning and purpose in your work, then they will start to feel like so demanding and like such a drag on your time that you sort of lose your way a little bit. So I would say making time to push the urgent back just a little bit and make a little space for your own thinking and your own strategy is so important. And the second piece of advice is one of my favorite supervisors told me once, it's okay not to like your job sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean you're in the wrong job. It doesn't mean everything is going down in flames. If you can like your job about 80% of the time and not like it 20%, you're great. Like, that's fine. Don't worry about if you don't love every single aspect of your job every moment of the day. If you do, that's fantastic, and give me a call because I'd love to know what you're doing. But
Probably not much.
right, I was
So,
gonna say maybe not much, but just knowing that it's not always going to be rainbows and glitter all day long, and that's okay. I think as a new and young professional, that was really important advice for me to hear, to know that work is sometimes just work, and that's fine. And as long as it doesn't become all work and no fun and no passion, then you're still doing okay.
yeah, and that's important. I think a lot of people, as you said, that was advice you got earlier in your career,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of us, when we start in our professional lives, we have been told, like, do whatever you want. Like, if you have something fun to do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? There
Exactly.
are these very like extreme things for what it takes to be satisfied, or what you should expect to be fulfilled from work. So, but it's important for those of us, mid-career or 80s people, even ones who wanted to be cartoon drummers, to to remind each other that that's normal, and it doesn't mean
Yes.
you've made all the wrong choices, and they're
Right. You don't have to
feelings of
spin out. It's okay.
exactly. Well, Bridget, it has been a pleasure and so much fun talking with you
Likewise.
today. I really appreciate you making the time for us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a great conversation.
I'm glad you enjoyed. Take care.